Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Cassandra Williamson, Executive Director for Transgender Diverse Veterans of America. Thank you for being here with us today. I am doing this show live from Eastern Kentucky, right against the West Virginia and Virginia border, right there in the corner, right in that area, Hatfield-McCoy feud country. We have a lot to talk about today, though. There's some things happening all across this country that are absolutely the opposite of what any democracy ought to be doing, but it's a big trend towards authoritarianism and illiberalism. I'll get into that in just a minute. But Florida, oh my God, what's going on down there? And with that, we're going to roll the intro. I only got my glasses that are not reflective of the computer screen. All right. So first thing I want to do is let's just talk about Florida for a minute. So let me go down and share a screen with you. I'm going to go back here. No, that's not it. Where is it? Got to find the right place. Right one. Where did it go? Anyway, I know it's in here somewhere. That's a picture. There we go. Now, let me go back to here, and I'm going to share a screen. Now we'll share a screen. Share the screen. We're going to go with a window and share this. All right, so what you're looking at right now is a letter that was distributed this morning by Erin Reed with Erin in the Morning. And definitely, Erin is doing some great work. And I just want to do a big shout out for Erin Reed and everything that she's doing. And I'm so grateful for all the stuff that she has put together. And if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed to Erin in the Morning, just look it up, Erin in the Morning. Go there, subscribe, get involved and listen to what she has to do. She's got quite a few really good things going on. So this letter. Now, let's get to this letter. This letter is from the Department of Florida. I'm going to blow it up so we can actually increase the size and I can read it better maybe. This is from the Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles Department. Okay, I don't know if they call it department or whatever. But anyway, so this letter was sent out on January the 26th of 2024 to all the county tax collectors and all the people within all the counties across the state of Florida. And this letter is just horrible, just to put it bluntly. I got to figure out how to go scrolling up and down the thing now. Anyway, so this letter, I mean, read through this thing. If you don't have a copy of this yet, you need to see it because this is the kind of stuff that the rest of the country is going to try to do too. It has never been about protecting kids or anything like that. They've always wanted to go after all people who don't look like, act like, think like, and believe like them. And that's exactly what they're doing here, folks. They're rolling back everything that has been achieved about protecting people who don't look like them or act like them or believe like them. That's what they're doing. It's right out of the playbook from the Heritage Foundation. It's right out of Family Watch International. It's another organization that my friend Angela Brightfeather mentioned just a minute ago to me on the phone. And so these things are being played out in Florida right now. And this letter, let me go down here to the bottom. Establishing gender. I'm going to see if I can kind of increase the size so we can look at it better. Okay. Establishing gender on a newly issued Florida driver's license is based on the supporting documents provided with the application. These documents must be sufficient to establish identity of the applicant under this. Furthermore, misrepresenting one's gender, understood as sex here, because they think those two words are synonymous, which in fact they are not, on a driver's license constitutes fraud and subjects an offender to criminal and civil penalties, including cancellation, suspension, and revocation of his or her driver's license. And notice right here, this is a political statement. Again, they're making their politics known. They're preempting the bill that's going through the Florida legislature now that would do exactly the same thing, but the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles has already decided that they're just going to go ahead and do this anyway. So, and on the paragraph right above that, furthermore, the term gender in section such does not refer to a person's internal sense of his or her gender, role, or identification, but has historically and commonly been understood as a synonym for sex, folks, which is determined by innate and immutable biological and genetic characteristics. So what they're doing here, people, is telling you that if, I'll just read it. I'll tell you. Additionally, a driver's license is an identification document, and as such serves a critical role in assisting public and private entities in correctly establishing the identity of a person presenting the license, permitting an individual to alter his or her license to reflect an internal sense of gender, role, or identity, which is neither immutable nor objectively verifiable, undermines the purpose of the identification record, and can frustrate the state's ability to enforce its laws. So, go to the next one above that. I know I'm going backwards on this, but hey, just start where the horribleness is with this thing. The department here, okay, let's start at the top right here. The department has undertaken, let me go up here and just show it to you. The department has undertaken a review of current practices and policies and directives to better align the services provided by the department and its partners to our stakeholders. As part of this review, the department is reviewing practices, policies, directives to ensure all guidance provided by the department is consistent with Florida law. Right. The department hereby rescinds, and this was effective then. I mean, there's no clause of saying, it's going to do it on this date. It says hereby rescinds the driver license operations manual issuance requirements. And it's RO8 gender requirements. This guidance directed personnel to issue a new license in the event that a licensee wished to alter the gender marker on his or her license. The provisions of the gender requirements are not supported by statutory authority. The department can issue a replacement license only when a license or permit is lost or stolen, or when there is subsequent change to the licensee's name, address, or restrictions. So there you go, folks. Florida coming after people because they don't like them. That's really all it amounts to. So I thought I'd maybe just share that with you so that you could see it. Let me go back over to where I am on the face page here. Thank you for watching, everyone. So Florida, what's the crap going on? Why do you take such offense at trans people? Why? It used to be that you were just after the LGBT people, but you've kind of graduated into the weakest or the least numerous one out of the whole category of all of those things. Okay, there are fewer of us and it makes it easier to fight, but also, they do exactly what they've always done down through history. They claim at first that they're protecting women and children, when in fact they're not really doing that at all. What they're trying to do is just eliminate a whole class of people simply because they disagree with them. And that, my friends, is what's called illiberalism. Illiberalism is an attempt to change the human rights of a group of people simply because they don't match the majority in the country. And it goes hand in hand with another word called authoritarianism. Authoritarianism looks to change the democratic processes. Illiberalism attacks human rights. These things that they are doing is directly out of the playbook for illiberalism. We've seen this in history, the same tactic being used in different ways down through history. I mean, even within this country, you can see it. In the 1880s, 1890s, and 1900s, we did the same thing with the Chinese people who were over here helping build our railroads. We went after them. We didn't want them around the women and children. And they were taking our jobs. And they were bringing disease with them. So we wanted to close the borders to them. Didn't want to bring them in. Now you're thinking, what border? What were the Chinese crossing? They came by ship. Sure, they did, for the most part. But some who had been told not to come in went down through Mexico and came across the darn border in the 1880s and 90s. Folks, this is nothing new what's going on today in this country. It just seems new because most people have no clue about our own history. And the history has been whitewashed anyway. So what the heck, cleaned up to make it look like whatever the majority wants. So that was the Chinese people in the 1890s, somewhere around that period of time. And a fence did get put up. A fence did get put up down in Arizona. That fence, by the way, was not designed to keep people out. It was designed to keep the Mexican cows out because they had tick fever. That's the extent of it. And everybody's had an opportunity to build a wall for 100 years, more than 100 years, but, it wasn't appropriate to do so back then because cattle ranchers went across the border taking care of their cattle all along that border. But anyway, I digress. So the point is, though, that this kind of authoritarianism and illiberalism is popping its head up all over the place. And then come around into the 1920s, 1930s, we see a lot of stuff happening on U.S. campuses. After the First World War and before the Second World War, there were riots on campus and protests on campus. Do you know why? Because there was military recruitment taking place on some of the campuses in the country. The students of that time didn't want that. They didn't want to be subjected to the military. Yeah, nothing new again. And also, they were also objecting to, there was a lot of anti-Semitism on campus then. There was a lot of stuff going on then. I mean, and guess who was on those campuses at the time? Especially in the 30s, right after 1929, whenever the stock market crashed and the Great Depression started. Guess who the students were demographically on those college campuses? They were not minorities. They were economically and financially more stable Americans, typically white people back then, as for the most part, white Americans back then in the 30s. And they really protested against, the military being on campus. They protested. There was a lot of anti-Semitism there. You can go look it up yourself. It's all there. Check it out. Just go dig into the history a little bit and read about it. Look at protests in that period of time. But what was also happening then, and what did Germany do whenever the fascists took over? Oh, let me just go back and tell you a little bit about how that all occurred. In 1922, Mussolini took over in Italy. But how did he get there? He didn't just march in with a force of an army or whatever and take over. No, his black shirts weren't there. He was invited into the system by the leaders at the time. And they thought, well, maybe we could just get this person to it because a lot of people are following him around and we could help turn the country back around and all that. Not realizing that this person had an authoritarian and illiberal bent that would just absolutely decimate that country. But, they fell for it. They fell for him. And then when in 1933, the chancellor, Hitler became chancellor of Germany, he didn't do that from outside and taking over. It wasn't a forced takeover. He was brought in, the president at the time, I think the premier was somebody, I know the name on top of my head. Anyway, so he was invited in because, he had a lot of power and they thought that they could control it. The people in Italy thought they could control Mussolini. The people down in Germany thought they could control Hitler. But no, you have charismatic leaders who are out there stirring up the country. They have no interest in protecting the democratic systems that are in place, none whatsoever. They just give that facade of that. Then they get in and they start putting their people in power in places where they can actually go in and change things in the government using the systems that are in place. Democracy works that way. You allow people to come in, and that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to work. But we have to be able to stand up and tell them, oh, no, we're not doing it that way anymore. I mean, if you're going to attack the institutions, if you're going to start saying that the civil institutions in Italy or in Germany at that time were the problem, that they were the things that were denigrating, causing Germans or Italians not to have the things that they were entitled to, you start denigrating those institutions. Democratic institutions have been in place for a long time, and you start tearing them down in the media, you start tearing them down all over the place like that. Well, yeah, then you're going to open the door up for somebody to come in and just go, whew, hey, we're just going to turn right over into fascism, an authoritarian, illiberal fascism. So, and then Chavez from down in Venezuela, guess what? He was very popular, very charismatic. The country was going through, so they had some really good times going on right there prior to him and all that. But, he had a very large popular following. And he was working from within the system. And because the president at the time said, hey, come on in, we could work together. Well, it didn't take very long. They thought also that they could actually control Chavez. But no, that was not to be. Because you had another person who had popularly claimed that the government was working against the people. Now, does that sound like it's reminiscent of anything we're seeing today? Yes, it does. Now, I want to be very clear about this. This bent toward authoritarianism and illiberalism can happen on any extreme, either side, left or right. But which one is the threat right now? Right now. Which one is causing the biggest threat right now to our democratic institutions in this country? Which one is claiming, let me just go ahead and tell you, which one is claiming that our democratic institutions are failing the people? Which one is saying that the Department of Justice is going after Americans? Which one is saying that, let's see, you name it, any other part of the federal system, any other part of our democratic institutions, when you start saying those are the problem and you start pounding it and pounding it, whether true or not, you keep saying it and saying it and saying it, it weakens those democratic institutions. The only way to protect your democracy, folks, is to make sure that you call those things out. But it's also incumbent upon the parties. Both parties have to be willing to say, hey, we're not going to go down that road with this because that doesn't represent our limited democracy, our constitutional republic. It doesn't abide by or protect the Constitution of the United States. So whenever you start tearing down those institutions, that should be called out immediately, left or right. Whoever's doing those things, if you're out here trying to perpetuate this story that the federal government is the problem or that your state governments are the problem, if they don't line up with everything exactly as you believe they ought to be, then the problem that you're facing is an attack on democratic institutions. Now, what did I tell you at the beginning that this was all about? That's authoritarianism. That's what authoritarianism is. And it doesn't matter if it's left or right, but the biggest voice right now attacking all these democratic institutions is who? It's on the right, folks. And it's not Republicans per se. It's a bunch of conservatives who have become activists over on the other side. They're right now the ones doing this. They're the ones pushing the loudest. They've got the loudest bullhorn out there. Well-funded, loudest bullhorn. They're attacking everything that has to do with the democratic institution in this country. When you start tearing down those institutions, it's a good sign. That's one of the first signs to tell you that this activist part is the one driving the narrative toward authoritarianism. Okay. Now, which one of these sides is out here going, oh, we don't want that group of people to have human rights. We don't want them to be protected. We want to take away from them because we know, we're afraid of it. Which group is doing that? Well, the left and the right have some things that they have to work on in that regard. But the loudest voice right now are those going after LGBT people or transgender people primarily these days. And that's coming from a huge narrative over on the right, controlled by the Heritage Foundation, and Family Watch International is stepping into this attacking of transgender people as well. And I want to thank Angela again for pointing that out to me. Tell me about that organization. This organization is run by Sharon Slater from Gilbert, Arizona. So, I mean, it's a very far-right activist organization that has tremendous influence around the world. It's Family Watch International. They formed in 1999. On their website, they say they've got members in 170 different countries around the world. And but their push is, the biggest thing they pushed for the longest time has been anti-LGBT stuff. Now they're moving into the transgender stuff, because it's politically convenient to do so. Why on earth would they not want to, right? I mean, Heritage has built up this big attack umbrella thing, attacking transgender people, but they're denigrating our rights. They're trying to take away things. That's what Florida is doing right now, attacking the rights of the transgender people in their state. And they won't stop there, folks. They'll roll back everything else that has to do with protecting a minority. What is the definition of that? Where does that definition lead? That's illiberalism. That's not the liberalism, the liberal type democracies that have been a hallmark of the world since the end of World War II. No, this is illiberalism. Viktor Orban, definitely illiberalism and authoritarianism. We see it in different places around the world. That's the biggest threat to it. Our limited constitutional type democracies, authoritarianism and illiberalism. And you've got people over on the right, some of the leaders over there, the activists on that side, who are doing everything in their power to exert their authority and to strip away rights. Now, they're going to say that DEI, which comes from the left, is challenging their rights. But you know something? That's just a bunch of bullcrap. That's what that is. It's just craziness, because that's not the case whatsoever. I do agree, however, that there are some things that have gone too far. All sides do it. They all go way too far one way and way too far the other. And we've got to make sure that this stuff comes together and we actually find the common ground. But we have to protect our democratic institutions. We have to protect human rights of all of us. And that includes ideological differences, folks. Ideological bias and ideological differences need to be protected just as strongly as anyone else. I don't want to hear any of us in our groups out here saying they're not American because they believe this way. No, they're still Americans. They just happen to believe something that you don't want to believe. Okay, that's fine. That's good. The problem is when either one of those two suddenly decide that their way is better and the best than the other. Whenever they decide that they're going to destroy the democratic institutions, clean house, strip away all the executive branch and all of the administrative state, whenever they start talking about doing all those things, there's some right to it, but there's also vast wrongness in it as well, okay? When they start talking about that, that's authoritarianism. When they start stripping away rights, that's illiberalism, folks. Those two work together. But how you want to accomplish this? What's their end goal with all of this? Well, Christopher Rufo, Heritage Foundation, they all talk about color blindness and being silenced. They will tell you to the ends of the earth that they're being silenced, that their point of view is being silenced, and that they want just a colorblind society. Well, really what they want is not necessarily colorblindness, but it's assimilation. And by that, I mean, they want you to give up your minority identities to look like them. Colorblindness wants you to pretend that there are no differences, and when in fact there are. But they want to pretend that there are no similarities. As not similarities, but they want to pretend there are no differences, okay? That's what colorblindness is. And then the multiculturalism side of things, well, that's also a step too far in one direction as well. I mean, it's just as wrong. It's just on the same scale. One is over here, one's over here. And that's what they're talking about, those two differences, okay? So colorblindness is just, it's an ideological blindness, okay? And they don't want to see any of the differences out there. But it's also a utopian view, a Pollyannish kind of view that they're seeking to pursue on the country, because any person who walks through the country and you say you don't see color, well, you're fooling yourself and pretending that you don't. I mean, there are shades of white. There are shades of that all over the place. I mean, come on, really? You don't see the color, you don't see the differences, you don't see the minority identities, you don't realize, you don't understand that the differences are with, there are social determinants of health that's based upon your minority status. So if you can be colorblind, then you can pretend those problems don't exist, right? That's what they want. They don't want to talk about it. They want to hear about it. They don't want anybody even saying the first thing about it. And assimilation, well, that's what they want. They want all of us over here who are different to go, shoot, be like them, look like them, shut up, don't say anything else. Well, yeah, we've got to find a better way. That is not the way to do it, folks. We have to recognize these differences and then do things. But see, there are similarities. Now, look, don't get me wrong. There are similarities between all of us. But there are also glaring differences between all of us. But yet, overall, guess what it's all wrapped in? It's the American flag. We're all Americans, folks. Figure out a way to protect our democratic institutions and not attack human rights, because we don't want that. Those are attacks on democracy itself. And if you're falling into that trap, then you're doing exactly what the Germans and the Italians did. You're doing exactly what the Venezuelans did. Same thing, welcoming in somebody to destroy your system. And guess what the loudest voice is today? We've got to go vote. Go vote. Because I want to tell you something. It won't stop in Florida. It won't stop in Utah. It won't stop in West Virginia. They're going to keep coming after those who aren't like them and try to assimilate us, like the Borg on Star Trek. big old thing comes in and absorbs entire societies and cultures and says, whoop, you're all the same as us. That's what colorblindness / assimilation is. It's wrong. Ethically and morally wrong to do that. You can't pretend that the differences aren't there and have any kind of success at it. You're being, that's an illiberalist kind of view. So let's see what the comment is over here inside. Junia Childers. Okay. And Dr. Pinhead, I'll just put this up there for you. And Dr. Pinhead Roberts is a fan of Viktor Orban. Yes, he is. Even supports him being reinstalled as dictator. Yeah. I mean, we had a conservative conference in over there with Viktor Orban, right? Hungary. So, I mean, and then you have the Family Research Council, you got Heritage, and all these people supporting Viktor Orban. He is the antithesis. He is exactly what those definitions of authoritarian and illiberalism is. Rolling back rights for people they don't like, trying to get everybody to go in, controlling the media, putting people in place and in power that enables them to control all of it. Orban has done that. Chavez did it. Mussolini did it. Pinochet did it. Hitler did it. Worked the system. They worked right in. They worked the system. It wasn't a military coup that took over these places, folks. They walked and used the system that was in place. Now, we don't want to change the system, but we have to be very vocal about the threats to the system. And that requires both parties, all parties involved, to have a foremost little set of rules that say, we are protecting our limited constitutional republic democracy, okay, our limited democracy. We're protecting the institutions and all that's associated with it. And both sides have to agree to that, to protect that. But right now, they're not. The loudest one destroying it right now happens to be over on the right side in this country. And I'm not talking about all of them. I'm talking about the activists and extremists over there that's coming out of Heritage, that's coming out of, the Family Watch International, is coming out of America First Legal, and Alliance Defending Freedom, Family Research Council, and all those groups over there on that side that are absolutely wanting to roll back protections for minorities in the country. With that, come back the next time. We'll have another heated conversation about all of this stuff. And there's the outro.